Hello and welcome to the Nova Show Real Estate Records. I'm Tristan Hammett, your host for today's episode. Today we have Jenna Gianneschi, a top 500 Utah Realtor. With over 20 years of experience in residential and commercial real estate, Jenna is known for her strategic negotiation skills and unwavering commitment to her clients. Her approach is all grit and no fluff, ensuring that every transaction is handled with precision and a concierge level of care. Welcome, Jenna.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. This is the first time Jenna and I have met.
Yes, indeed. This
Yes.
is my first podcast.
First podcast.
Yes.
And she was like on it. She's like, yeah, why not? Like, let's do this.
I was floored. I was like, sure.
Yeah. I'm excited that you're here. And I can already tell, like, we've been texting in our first phone call and all that. I'm like, this is going to be fun.
Oh, we're going to have fun.
We're going to have fun.
Well, because it goes both ways, right?
Yes.
You got to have that good
that's
rapport.
true. That's true.
Okay. Something to talk about, right?
Yes.
So it goes.
So we're going to try and dig in and find out all about you together. Okay. So, Jenna, where are you from? And then how did you get into the real estate world?
So, somewhat by accident. I am originally from the suburbs of Chicago. I grew up in a town called Itasca. I went to school downtown at DePaul University. Had a myriad of majors. I originally thought I was going to be on Telenoticias as a Spanish news broadcaster.
Wait, what? You speak Espanol?
Más o menos.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So that was kind of my original thing. And then I ended up working for Kellogg's Cereal, kind of got into the business world, graduated with finance. And at some point during my 6-year endeavor, I started working at Trump Tower, Chicago.
Oh.
And it was more or less by accident. I was just applying for like a weekend receptionist role. And the question was, do you know how to work Microsoft Office? And I was like, yeah, más o menos. So I got the job and I worked there for a while, worked my way up. And then there was a gal at the time, Jane Field, and she was kind of the grande dame of Chicago real estate at the time. She sold Oprah's house in Indiana and some of the Bulls players and really high-end real estate. So there's an opportunity to go be her assistant, and I jumped all over that. So that was kind of how I got into real estate once upon a time, many years ago.
Okay, so did you do real estate in Chicago?
I did eventually. Okay. I'm going to date myself right now, but at the time you had to be 21. So once I turned 21, I got my license. I sold a $1.3 million condo. I thought I was the richest gal in the world.
Wow.
And then shortly thereafter, I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Finance, and the entire real estate and financial markets fell apart in 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I left the country. And then I was going to originally go to Italy. I was like going to go, find a husband, set up shop, whatever. Then I decided to pivot and ended up in China.
What?
Yeah. And that was amazing. And I'm really glad I did it. It was completely wild. But it was very rewarding. So
Do you speak Mandarin?
Mama hoo hoo.
Oh.
Which technically translates to horse, tiger, but that's basically, a little bit.
Wow.
Here, a little bit there. But I really
Do you speak Italian?
No.
Okay.
Italian was actually really hard. I can kind of sometimes understand it, but I did take lessons, but it's in my brain, it's almost the opposite of Spanish. So my teacher was always yelling at me like, basta española, which is enough Spanish, because it's like opposite.
Oh.
So what's masculine seems feminine, and what's plural is, it just changes.
Okay.
So I would love to in the future one day.
Okay.
I really like languages, but.
Okay, so you went to China.
Yes.
And then how long were you there for?
I was there for about 3 or 4 months. I did an ESL program. Then I volunteered in a couple of cities, fell in love with this one, like very random, esoteric one in near Ningbo. It's called Xiangshan, very tiny town. And I was like the only foreigner that had ever been there. So it was a very unique experience, totally different than something you'd see in Shanghai, right? Very metropolitan area, city, diverse, lot of mix, right? So I did that, and then I came back, and then at the time, the economy still was kind of trash. So I was like, well, I better get a backup plan. And these will last my entire life. So if anything ever happens again, highly unlikely, right? That America's economy kind of tanks, then I can go anywhere in the world and I can teach English, because there's always usually going to be a demand for English. at least hopefully in the remainder of my lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a backup plan. So
Yes.
then I went to Brazil. Brazil, very difficult, very dangerous. Didn't realize that. Was not paying a lot of attention. Very naive. I got robbed like twice. I had a hostel with bed bugs. I mean, it was quite a scene. And luckily, I got adopted by this lovely gay couple. One guy was from the Bronx in New York. The other guy was a local from Brazil. And I just remember the first night I spent at their apartment. I rented the other room effectively for my time there. And they gave me this towel. And it was a beach towel. And it was like bigger than I was. And it was the most luxurious towel. And I didn't have a towel this entire time. So I was more or less air drying. And it's, keep in mind, winter in our hemisphere, but it's very, very hot summer down there in February. It's right before Carnival, which I did not stay to witness. It was very intense partying that got a little bit more sophisticated than my level of preparation.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yeah, so still a worthwhile experience. Lucky I survived. Very good. And then I eventually went back to China. One of my students was the niece of the headmaster. So she wrote a letter and all the kids from my grade signed it. And so they brought me back for about a year and I got to teach basically probably like a freshman, sophomore in high school level class. But it's crazy there. I mean, you're talking about classroom management of 80 kids.
Wow.
And there's no air conditioning and there's a lot. And they take school very seriously because it basically is going to this particular test that they take, the I think it's the Gaokao, kind of like our ACT or SAT, more or less determines their fate, or at least so is ingrained in their heads. So if they don't do well and perform well on that test, then they're not going to be able to take care of their parents and their grandparents.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a very interesting culture.
Yeah.
And at the time I was there, they also had the one-child policy in place.
Oh.
So the kids' interaction with one another was very, very sweet, but very different than what you would see in American schools. You know what I mean? Lots of hand-holding amongst boys and boys, boys and girls, girls and girls. Maybe not so much boys and girls. That was a little bit taboo, but just it was really sweet. They were really just the sweetest kids. It was a very rewarding experience. And
wow.
Maybe one day I'll do it again.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're back in China, and then when do you come back to the U.S. and then come to Utah?
So I came back to the U.S. shortly thereafter. I was here for a few years. The difficult thing about being abroad as the only foreigner by oneself, and really I had maybe 2 or 3 kids that could talk at the proficiency level where you could really carry on and kind of like, interact with somebody on a level, of certain interpersonal levelness. There was also Chinese English teachers, but even then there's both a cultural and a language barrier to some degree. So it got really lonely.
I bet.
So I, as I do with many things in life, I'm an overachiever. And it started with just a couple relaxing cocktails to unwind and kind of ended up spiraling out of control. So that's how I ended up in Utah. I ended up in the hospital. I had moved to my dad's farm to try and find sobriety out there.
And is that in Utah?
Myself. Well, first I moved back to Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago. Okay. Then my dad bought a farm in Michigan. So I stayed up there and I had increased stretches of sobriety, but I wasn't getting there. There was still like underlying issues that really needed to be addressed. I didn't know what they were. I was very reluctant to do that. I might get emotional. Just not quite ready, I think, to have to face a lot of that. And my my last hospitalization, I was a 0.48 blood alcohol level. Wow. And so I remember I was definitely I had delirium tremens. That's basically where you're in such a state of withdrawal. You have like auditory or tactile or visual hallucinations. I could barely sign my name. I could hear what was going on around me, but I wasn't I was very much in haze. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, crap. If you're a vegetable, nobody is going to be bringing you bottles of wine. And so you've got a couple decisions to make. And my dad had tracked me down, and he had found a program at Sherwood Hills out in Wellsville, up kind of, up north.
Okay.
And so I remember coming home, and full disclosure, there was nothing in the house. The house had been completely cleared out, as was often the case. There was a lot of preventative measures and things my family did to try to keep me safe, but, it was hard to try and out hustle me back then.
Yeah.
So, so at that very night that I came back, I attempted to drink plant fertilizer. And then I was like, what are you doing? You're not going to make it at this rate. So I remember calling my grandmother the next morning, and I was like, hey, I'm really mad at my dad right now. I'm pissed because I feel like I'm being shipped off, even though at this point he's really kind of exhausted all of his options. And so I just remember saying, look, I got to figure this out. I'm probably going to have to go away. So I need you to promise you're going to be here.
I see the tissues.
When I get back, I'll be fine. I just got to dissociate a little bit more. No, it's fine. I don't really talk about it often, and I didn't anticipate it necessarily coming up to this emotional level of degree, but it's a good thing to be reminded of because there's a lot of people that I met along the way that aren't here. Mm-hmm. And there is luckily a really amazing group of people that still is that were imperative. Because, the old expression, like, it takes a village, mm-hmm. it took a couple cities in Utah, municipalities. So anyway, so I called my grandmother, and I was like, hey, I really, because she was like 80 at the time or thereabouts. I'm like, I really need you to, stick around till I get back. So made arrangements, came out here. In fact, I'm about 2 weeks away from my 9-year sobriety anniversary.
Amazing.
And I came out, and I was at this facility up in Wellsville, and I was there for about 2.5 weeks. I just completed phase 1, starting to feel really good because it takes a while for your brain to really dry out. And that's the unfortunate part about a lot of mental health care programs in America is that they're basing it on a 30-day treatment program. And by 30 days, you're just getting somebody to the point to be receptive, to start to feel okay again, to detox physically and mentally, right? Mm-hmm. Which are all imperative. How can you receive if you're still in a haze?
Right.
So anyway, so I digress. So 2.5 weeks, complete phase 1, super stoked, starting to feel a little better. And the state comes in and they do this evaluation, and we pass. And then within a couple of days, that's not the case. And they've kind of pulled it. And now we're all quarantined inside a lunchroom for hours upon end. Everybody's freaking out. And this is a very large facility. This is in my opinion, it's a much larger facility than you would see in most places. And I can speak to it because I ended up in 3 here. So
wow.
It was a very large facility. It was an old golf resort, so a hotel-style model. So they had the capacity. And they offered a lot of different modalities. In principle, it was really great. I myself personally didn't witness any of the transgressions, but apparently they had sufficient evidence to make a case, and they shut it down. So at this point, I'm now however many miles, 1,200 miles away from home or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, if I go home, I'm dead. I straight up know I will die. Mm-hmm. I drank on my way to rehab. I don't see myself getting home sober and or at all, right?
Yeah.
So I got to figure some things out. As luck and fate would have it, the woman that had been my admissions counselor at Sherwood Hills had moved down to Mapleton. Michelle Bowman, eternally grateful for you. She got me into a different treatment facility, but the issue at the time was apparently insurance fraud. So they were paying my premium to collect the money, insofar as I understand. So I had no valid insurance. So if you don't have insurance in this country, good luck.
Wow.
So they scholarshiped me for several weeks. And then one of the guys that I had met, a young man out of California, ended up getting me scholarshiped into Mountain Peak Recovery. And they took me in, and they got me on insurance They got me into counseling. They had some very harsh truths with me right up front. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to give it our the old college try, right? And I stayed, so I was in patient treatment for probably a total of about 4 months, which is relatively unheard of, despite like kind of some, yeah, more or less harrowing circumstances. Because if I was going home, I was like, it was at that point life or death.
Yeah, yeah.
It became life or death a long time ago, but I was running out of my 9 lives by that point. My get out of jail frees were cashed in. There wasn't a whole lot of legroom left. And so I got there, and I was one of the lucky ones. Just through a series of unfortunate events, I was able to spend 4 months with several different amazing therapists all across the board that gave me the tools to at least get to my 31st birthday.
Wow.
And then I spent some time in sober living, and eventually got to a place where I had an apartment and I was like running my own impromptu sober living and just really trying to like, always kind of pay it forward because it's really difficult. You're talking about a bunch of people that have really burnt their lives to the ground. They don't have a lot of family or friends left. Those bridges have been burnt. Difficult to maintain a job when there's all these gaps in your resume, when going. And the other thing is we're creatures of habit. So one of the interesting things I thought was in an outpatient discussion, somebody had talked about performing the same job and how much more difficult it was that they were no longer under the influence of substances. They weren't high anymore.
Yeah.
So like they couldn't do their job. And I was like, that's really interesting. I wonder if that increases the rate of recidivism. So I made a conscious decision at that point. I'm like, I'm not going to do that job anymore. So I got into something totally different, ended up in software sales to real estate agents, ironically, for a company local here to Utah, CirclePix. They eventually got acquired by another company that has had mind-blowing growth over the last couple of years inside real estate. They're the founders of KV Core, now Bold Trail. And got into it, and I was like, you know what? I need to change from corporate America. I need to try and kind of do this
And get back into real estate.
Yeah. And I'd only really dipped a toe into it, but I knew so much about it, and I wanted the flexibility, and it can get exhausting. And after COVID, I was like, yeah, why not? I had a wonderful boss. I followed him over to a different company, another wonderful local company here to Utah, Opinion. They do review management. They have had incredible growth over the last couple of years, despite tragic loss of their founder, which is like a very heart-touching story. Anyway, I digress. But I've had the privilege to work with a lot of amazing companies here. But I think ever since college, I was never going to be a manager. That's not my personality.
Yeah.
I'm very outside the box.
Yes, I can tell.
From some, some life experiences and some casual things like that. But yeah, it's been an amazing ride. This is probably the last place in possibly the world, but one of the last 50 states I ever thought I would have ended up in. I was completely oblivious to the culture in Utah. I think my transition in rural China, was probably an easier acclimation.
Wow.
But a lot of that was my own guilt and shame and projection in hindsight. And I had a roommate from treatment that I just, those friends you just fall in love with instantly. You just somehow bond. And she passed away. And it was a rumor of suicide. I'm not quite sure really what happened. And up until that point, full disclosure, I was lying about what brought me to Utah. Very difficult to go from a city of amazing food and deep dish pizza to a place where best pizza is like Domino's and Papa John's kind of thing.
Yes.
Like there's, and there's not the religious element. So like, why did I come? So I had a whole script, worked it up. And then after Crystal passed away, I was like, this is ridiculous. And who is this serving? Like they always say like, you stay as sick as the secrets you keep are some expression in AA. And I was like, yeah, I'm exhausted. There's no point.
Yeah.
And so when I have the opportunity to talk about it, and even when I don't have an intention about talking about it, it comes up. And I always think maybe that's the universe's way to remind me like, hey, like you're still here.
Yeah.
And I am one of the lucky ones. And I will tell you, like, the Irish have this thing, it's basically fate. It's called WYRD, WYRD. And I think about that from time to time. I had this amazing high school English teacher, Barbie Dwyer, and she just did this amazing chapter on Celtic history and stuff. And I think that plays, like, everything happens for a reason, so to speak. And like I said, this is probably one of the last places I would ever thought I would have ended up. But 10 years ago, I was a woman that never had any female friends because of relationship issues with my mother that I didn't have resolved, that I was able to resolve in her lifetime, and I'm very grateful for.
Yes.
There's just a lot of things that I didn't ever think would be a thing for me, and then became a thing. And the group of women that I met through, I've always wanted to dance, but I've always been too shy. It's always fascinated me, and I was absolutely awful. And this woman took me in, and the women, get all emotional again, the women friends I made in that group, like, these are not professional therapists. To my knowledge, none of them were addicts, though I think addiction has, just by statistics, probably touched their life. Without them, I wouldn't be here. I have a couple friends that I met in rehab that are still my best friends, from mentors to therapists to other clients that are now serving as clinical directors.
Wow.
And I got very, very lucky because not everybody makes it. One of the guys that I had dated for a long time, this is going to be like the most random thing, so prepare yourself. Dated this guy. He, unfortunately, we split up. There was, just couldn't, he struggled. He had a lot of pain. And I remember getting the phone call that he had passed away, and we hadn't talked really, but recently, and we'd been able to get him back into treatment. I got his girlfriend into treatment, and it just didn't work out. And so I went to the funeral and got up and spoke, just because I think everybody was a little shy too. And I was like, he was a great guy, deserved it. Now, and that's where I met my husband. So talk about, like,
wow,
really things coming full circle. Like,
yes.
I mean, if I wouldn't have been an addict, if I wouldn't have come to Utah to get sober and stuck it out and stayed,
and been supported by all of the people that you've met around
all of these people.
Yes.
And had to, and because as tragic as these stories are, I really applaud the families that go out into the obituaries and they make it known and they make the donations and they publicize it, because there's still, in 2025, a horrific stigma attached to it. And, if my clients ask, like, I'm not going to lie to them and be like, oh, I came to because I really like honey. Like, what's my excuse?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not an outdoorsy girl. I tried skiing once. It was a comedy of errors. I appreciate you, Janella, for your efforts, but I was a terrible student and it took 2.5 hours. So, that's what brought me out here, and hopefully they understand, like, I'm not the type of person that when we encounter a problem in a transaction, and this is not just like, but to try and bring it back to real estate to some degree, I'm not just going to give up, because that's not an option where I come from. Sometimes we exhaust all of our options. That happens from time to time. Rare is the case, but it happens. But in the meantime, like, I'm always going to try and go to that next cognitive level. And I think the other thing that a lot of my trials in life have taught me is that I can read people really well. I pick up on pain a lot. I can pick up on emotion. And when you're transacting about a home, a family home, if it's your parents' estate, if it's your first home, or you're getting a divorce, or you're nothing, it's just your house. You just have an attachment to it because this was where your baby was born. This is where your child took its first steps, or your puppy got potty trained, whatever the situation is. That's an emotional thing. This is where people build their lives. These are the four walls in which people build their lives, and there's always emotion. And to be able to just tell somebody to flip it off as a switch is kind of silly, right? And it minimizes the lives that they've built.
Right.
So I try and always lend a sympathetic ear, but they also need to be reminded of the pragmatism and the logic behind it. And real estate's a very subjective, dare I say, art. and I think it's really important because so many people are only going to do this a handful of times in their life.
Yes.
So many times do I meet people that have transacted prior and they're like, nobody told me any of this last time. Nobody took the time. And I mean, when I say take the time, like I'm a talker, as you can tell. We've spent 3.5 hours going through buyer agency agreements just to make sure like everybody got all of their questions answered.
Yes.
And it's always a good refresher for me because you don't ever want to get into like a complacency or just like an automatron where you're just filling things in because the contracts change obviously from time to time. But it's an incredibly rewarding profession and it is a lot of work. There was a lot of discussion last year when the law changed about the buyer agency and decoupling. I personally think it was a wonderful pivot. It has not affected my business negatively, and I don't think it's affected anybody else's that I can think that I talked to, in the industry. I think it did folks a favor, but the reality is that our job is very trying. I cannot tell you how many sleepless nights I have lost. Not about necessarily mistakes that I have made in the transaction, but situations that have arisen in transactions that may jeopardize whether or not my clients have a roof over their head for Christmas.
Wow.
And that I internalize. And that's kind of a double-edged sword. You can ask my husband and my dad, my sounding boards, but my siblings. But, it's a very rewarding experience to be able to go into somebody's life. For example, my first house I ever sold in Utah was a mobile home in Salt Lake City. We sold it. They got cash, if I'm not mistaken, and we rolled that into a single family home for them that they owned during COVID. So I'm sure I should probably owe them an updated CMA, full disclosure. But they're going to be able to leverage money against that house. They're going to be able to put kids through college. Yes. They're going to be able to rent it out once they pay it off and level up. I mean, the fact is that while there's a lot of online businesses that have arisen and obviously the rise of AI, and there's a million different ways to make money, real estate still foundationally, especially for the person that's working in corporate America, where we've seen stagnant wage growth and people can barely afford groceries right now, let alone being able to worry about investing in all of the myriad of options that I think are very overwhelming to people that are more or less novices. Real estate is a tangible asset, so I think that there's a certain level of comfort with that. But regardless, you're only doing it a handful of times, most people, in a lifetime. So I think it's really critical that they feel like I'm holding their hand. And I tell every single person I talk to, if you don't understand something, ask me. If you don't understand it, ask me 1,000 times. It's not your fault. It's mine. I need to find a better way to explain that to you.
Okay.
And if that means I have to get a laser point and
do a presentation
and draw, draw pictures, then so be it. But it's critical because we are endeavoring in a partnership. They're hiring me, but I'm responsible for their fate to some degree, not to be dramatic, but it is, because anybody that lived through, I think 2008 would agree that,
can be taken away.
It can in the blink of an eye, and I never want to put anybody in a situation. And sometimes I have to be the person that comes in and looks in a house and tells you that the baby is ugly and we have to do some things. Or sometimes I have to look at you and say, you're out kicking your coverage here. Yeah. I don't want you to end up in 18 months calling me and not being able to make this payment.
Yeah. I want to back it up a little bit because when we were on the phone, I had told you that these are my favorite episodes because everyone's like, oh, you're SOI. But you didn't come here, and I didn't even know the extent of your story and your sobriety journey, So how do you go from Chicago to China to Brazil to China here and then start the successful real estate business? How does that even happen?
Okay, so I think I was the beneficiary of a few things. I was introduced to a wonderful broker, Ryan Larson. He, it just really happenstance. He used to work for a different company. Sorry.
No, you remember the rules.
Okay, thank you. That and not a swear word or something. least of the transgressions. But he was fantastic. He's a fantastic agent. He, hand to God, taught me everything that I know. Very much my personality, just really a wonderful guy. And so that was one thing that was very critical. The other thing is that, there's still people out in the market that sell more than me, that have more experience, that have more knowledge in certain markets or about certain types of products or whatever. The one thing I will say is that very few people can outwork me. I guess I would accredit my ADD, maybe, like that.
To be able to handle like so many things at once.
Yeah, I mean, because it's only me. When you work with me, you work with me. There's not a team. I don't have an assistant. So
do you have a TC?
No.
No, you do TC.
Me.
Wow, it really is all you.
Yeah, it's really just me, which can get overwhelming. Again, ask my husband at certain times. He is so patient and supportive, and
which
that is hard to find.
Yeah,
I think it is really difficult to find somebody to that degree. A lot of people want to say that they're that supportive, but when you're taking calls at 11 o'clock in the middle of the denouement of your Netflix series, and he's okay with it, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Me disappearing for 45 minutes at a time in a holiday. So I'm very, very grateful for my husband. But I digress. Now I got all distracted.
No, that's okay.
But my SOI, going back to that, I didn't have one. I mean, I had a series of people that I worked with and I knew from dance. And, what do you say? Hi, you kind of know a lot of my story. Let me help you with the biggest transaction in your life. And obviously my Rolodex, the reason that brought me here, again, I'm very grateful for, but it's the nature of the beast where, unfortunately, I know a lot of folks along the way that didn't make it. And so I had to create it. I had to invent it. I had to get scrappy. I had to get resourceful. I had to cry it out. I had to really question myself. I had to take some old jobs and be like, "Ooh, am I really ever going to cut it? Can I really do commission only?" And with the combined, I'd say inspiration of my old broker.
Okay.
He was very inspiring. He's a very high performing agent. His heart to hearts with me, because he would just give me the cold hard truth, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Because in Chicago, there's not a whole lot of sugarcoating. So I'm very grateful.
So you're like,
for
I
that.
feel home.
Yes. Oh yeah. The more profanity, and this is not just me. I'm gonna give a shout out to my friend Lana out in Park City, agent friend, under contract with her right now, and she is from Chicago. And she's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I thought I was crazy. She's like, no, it does. It's like a little bit of home when you're around people that, use a lot of colorful language.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had to get scrappy. I had to do a lot of research. I had to figure it out. I don't like hearing myself. I like to talk. I don't like to hear myself talk back. I don't want to hear myself on video.
You've got to listen to this. You have to.
I don't know. It'll probably make me cry again.
No.
I'll let my husband listen to it, and then he can proof it. And my one girlfriend, Crystal, that does podcasts. She's amazing too. Anyway, so I would say I had to get really resourceful. I had to be willing to try things. I spent a lot of money.
Did you cold call? Oh, so you spent a lot of money.
I spent a lot of money on stuff that did not work, that I paid for, and idiotically
was this
never
cold leads from online,
cold leads or virtual assistants will fill your calendar. There was a great project I signed up for but never did anything with, which is another I don't think this is unique to me. I think sometimes agents' problems is there's the new shiny object, and we feel good when we're investing in ourselves. It's going out,
in yourself and your business,
taking yourself to dinner, buying a new outfit, or just spending money on it. It's really fun.
Yeah.
And if we can say we're investing in our business, then even better.
Right.
So I think I was very lucky, and I think that early on I reeled it in a little bit. I'm trying to continue to draw boundaries, which continues to be a thing from day one when I stepped foot in Utah to today now in a different context, right? Be able to reel it in a little bit. But I mean, I was going over to people's houses. I was helping them fill out mortgage applications. I was typing it in for them.
Wow.
I was helping them call employers. I was
and now you're kind of
really, Now, my feeling is that if people are motivated enough, then they will do that. I don't want people to feel like they have a gun to their head. when people are ready, they're ready. I want them to know that when they work with me, I'm going to be there. If a problem arises, if I don't know the answer, come hell or high water, I will find it.
Right.
And I'm not going to, it can be difficult in different settings operating from the background in which I operate, to put that mildly, right?
Right.
So, not all agents are created equal. Some agents...
That's the beauty of this business.
It is.
Like, you can grow it however you want and whatever
100%.
feels like best for you and authentic to you. And
I have been incredibly lucky to work with so many amazing agents. It feels like there's always one point in the year where, the universe throws you a couple of challenging ones.
Yeah.
But that said, I take it as a learning lesson for myself.
Absolutely.
Or try to, mostly. And I think that for the most
not
part...
doing that.
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. That was not really constructive. There's always... But you're going to get that in any profession. And that's just like anybody asking me, like, well, is this a good neighborhood? There's good parts and bad parts. There's going to be good guys and bad guys. There's going to be people that want to, email the HOA with every one of your infractions, and then there's going to be people that become yours and your children's best friends for life. And I think that that's what's kind of the interesting thing. I wish there was like more of me to go around, like I could clone myself to actually have one entity of myself that could just hang out and follow around all of my clients, because some of my clients are so damn fun. They are so much fun, and I genuinely enjoy watching their families grow, watching them get promotions.
So how do you stay in front of them? Is it on social media?
Sometimes I don't do I need to be better. Admittedly, I need to implement more systems this year is kind of one of my focuses. Because again, I'm very fly by the seat of my pants. But come Christmas, I mentioned this earlier, pizza here is a crisis.
Oh, yes.
Okay. It is a crisis.
And I've never had Chicago pizza. So actually,
okay, well,
I used to work at Uno Chicago Grill.
Okay,
that was my first job.
And I'm going to show you real Chicago pizza, and I'm going to blow your mind. And that is going to be my gift to you.
Wait, so you're opening up a restaurant?
Oh, God, no.
Oh!
Absolutely not.
Oh.
I am too old and do not have the patience or the foot stamina to do that. But bless everybody. But I do have a wonderful list of recommendations for my very picky favorites in Utah for anybody that wants to ask.
Oh, okay. So you're getting this
But I import my pizza. I know that sounds really bougie and snobby, and I own that. It's a very elitist thing.
I want to tell you what pizza I get. You're going to be like,
which one?
I will not kill me. You're going to not be my friend after this.
I'm not. I'm going to help you.
Well, out of my options that I have here,
exactly. I think that's an amazing segue. Okay, they did a lot of Costco and rehab, so I got burnt out about 9 years ago. But it used to be great.
Oh, I mean,
okay. Well, my heart hurts a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I know how I'm going to rectify this immediately. So
okay,
we're gonna rock your world.
Will we go get pizza?
Oh, I'm going to send it to you. It's going to come in on dry ice.
Oh.
Okay. I'm going to also show you some Chicago style Garrett's popcorn, the original Chicago mix. So when you go through Costco and you see that one brand that has the caramel and the cheese,
okay,
that's a copycat. So I'm gonna send you the original.
Okay.
And then I think I might just spoil you and send you some Italian beefs as well.
Oh my gosh!
Mm-hmm. So now
you just become my new best friend.
You will understand if the way to your heart is your stomach, then
it's pizza.
Then we're
it's
besties.
Popcorn.
Yes, any delicious food.
It's deli meats. It's salamis. It's
you will now
pepperonis,
understand all of the memes behind the new pope now, who's from Chicago.
I haven't seen any.
Okay, well now they will give you context. Once your box comes, you will understand because these are all like the iconic classic foods.
Okay.
So I do that once a year and I send that to clients.
Amazing.
And it is a lot of fun because they really like it. And
so if you're not on social media, but you're like, are you calling
like
them? Are you
I touch base. I'm very lucky. Like I hear from them. I just got an invitation to some clients from 2 or 3 years ago. They're having a baby. They're getting married. So I'm going to the baby shower. Sometimes, if I have out-of-state clients, I've had out-of-state clients. And we've become like, we don't get to hang out a lot because of my work schedule, but we're like those friends that send the memes and text all the
back
time.
and forth, yeah.
And she was from, where is she relocating? Texas. I was her child's emergency contact at school. So I would go to all like the school plays, and I try to remember kids' birthdays.
So you're like building really authentic
Because they do. Because when the parents are going through the house, who's watching the kids? I read a horror story about some child running through glass sliders at a new construction. And I think it was actually an agent here in Utah, and she's like wonderful and like spreading the word, like, hey, watch your kids. This isn't a joke. But, you know, some kids are a little bit more artistic and driven and other things than
wild.
Others. So you got to kind of worry about them, like drawing on walls and breaking things and stuff like that. So, you know, I always have things for kids to do, bubbles and coloring books, and try and entertain them so mom and dad can focus, because it's hard enough to buy a house and remember it when you're seeing, you know, 5 in a day or 10 in a day or 15. I think my most, I think, is 23 in a day.
Wow.
Across 3 clients. And
do you find yourself, what's my question going to be?
Lost in thought, contemplating existential crisis often.
Oh my gosh. So you're watching the kids, and then you're staying in front of them. This is what I was going to ask. Do you find yourself at a place in your business that you're getting referrals?
Yes. Definitely get referrals. Very grateful always for the referrals. It's, you know, I know it sounds so trite and so cliche, but honestly, like the fact that you think I did a good enough job that you want to refer me to somebody else.
Yeah. It's the biggest compliment.
I mean, really, like what is a higher compliment? So I work with some referrals, and I'm getting to a point now where my clients are starting to resell some of them. I think I'm going 5 years in business now. And it's a lot of fun. I think right now I'm going to try, what I'd really like to do is not so much build a team, but I think I want to kind of start helping other agents, like consulting kind of to some degree. I still love selling houses. I think that has to do with the fact that we grew up on an unincorporated street. I'm the oldest of 5, so I had built-in friends, 3 girls and 2 boys. And there's only a handful of kids on my block. And you had to cross a major intersection to get to the rest of like the walkable neighborhoods in Itasca. So when I got to go, because I was the oldest, I helped my mom a lot. My dad traveled for CBS Sunday Morning News, so he was out of town a lot. And that's just kind of how it happens, right, with the eldest. And so I didn't get to go to a lot of friends' houses. But when I did, I was obsessed with seeing everything that was so different than my house. Mm-hmm. The architecture, the style, the exteriors, the interiors. I've always been obsessed with it. Yeah.
So you won't ever like let go.
I don't think so. I mean, even if I have a dream one day, like we would have a pied-à-terre in Europe, or maybe even relocate permanently, but I would still be interested in doing real estate over there. It's just like different aesthetics and different styles and different locations. Yeah. I think it's so fascinating.
You're just like you're so intelligent, first of all. You're reminding me.
That's the way to my heart.
No, I'm like so impressed. I'm like, you're so like
sweet.
Eloquent in the way that you speak. And I'm just like.
Well, this is G-rated. But one day.
Thank you for following the rules today, Jenna.
I appreciate it. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah,
it can be hard.
I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
No.
It's a lot to emotionally and physically, the things that you went through, and like look at where you are.
I am very lucky. And I will tell you, funny story, I had to fix something. It was either on Zillow or Realtor.com, which was under an old email from when I was licensed in Chicago at age 21.
Okay.
So I had to get back into that email like 2 weeks ago, and it was very difficult.
Oh.
It took me from here and put me completely back to where I was 9 years ago, or even worse, because at least 9 years
was
ago.
Was that the email you were using for a lot of
that was yes, for when I was out of, I mean, unfortunately, when you're talking about addiction, there's so many other things, and I'm not going to get into detail, but I think it's important to know that this isn't just, when I was in high school, I had a very severe eating disorder. So children especially females that have severe eating disorders, have a very high predilection of having a substance abuse disorder, which not a lot of people make that connection. I didn't know until hindsight, always fun, but that's an important thing. I don't know if I think a lot of people rationalize substance abuse. I think there's just a lot of problems, and I don't think we have a lot of treatments. And it's not fundamentally just drugs coming into the country. Yes, that is an element of it, but even if it's not drugs, guess what? I was drinking bottles of Listerine. I'm lucky I didn't go blind.
Yeah.
You can get pretty wasted on Listerine or Marsala wine or even vanilla extract, like things that people don't think of.
Yeah.
So where there's a will, unfortunately, in addiction, there's often some type of way, but it's often incredibly destructive on a multitude of levels.
Well, I just appreciate you. I know we're running out of time. I could talk to you, like we could have a podcast all day long because we could talk about so many things. I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing your story because it's powerful and empowering. So I know that you're not the only person that's struggling with or that has struggled with addiction.
Yeah.
You know, and
absolutely.
People need to hear that doesn't define you.
No.
You know? And
there's a way out. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I would say the same things for domestic violence survivors, sexual abuse survivors. Like, it is very difficult because I remember at one point before I came to Utah, before I got to Michigan, it was right before I went to Michigan because I was running out of options in Illinois. I was going to give up. And there was a train track by my house.
Oh, no.
And I was just inebriated enough that I could make a case for it. And luckily, my little brother and his friend were there. And though it was a very uncomfortable present reality at that juncture, they got me the help I needed. And it was very involuntarily, I might add. But again, I'm very lucky that I am here because there's so many people that don't. And if I have the opportunity to spread awareness, at some point, that's a major goal of mine, is to be able to create or utilize somebody else's 501c3, because they're very complex vehicles to like spend the time and create.
I've heard that, yeah.
Incredibly, which is unfortunate. I wish it was a little bit easier barrier to entry, but I really am looking for a 501c3 that I can work with to help people, because that's what was the difference for me. I got the scholarship to treatment. I stuck it out. I did the hard work, yes. But if those doors had not been opened for me, it was just me in my own head.
I can tell when you were talking about it.
In a vacuum.
You were full of gratitude.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The therapist that I had when I didn't have means, I literally wouldn't have, because I saw these people for years into my early recovery. And honestly, I'm probably due for a tune-up. You know what I mean? But like these people, Davey, Tara, all of them.
Jenna, where can people follow you?
At justjennarealestate.com.
Okay.
And then my very incredibly long name, they can probably copy from Instagram. That'll be the easiest. But it's JennaGianneschi. And probably the best place to really like hear about me firsthand. Like, don't listen to me because I think I might have been a little bit of a downer today. I hope not. I hope there's like some light at the end of the tunnel for anybody. If you've got friends or family, people that are struggling with addiction, don't buy a house from me. Buy a house from me. I don't care. Reach out to me and let me put you in touch with amazing people that have walked the walk and lived to tell the story and can get your friends or family or yourself the help that you need. Like, I if anything, that's the more important message I would want that hits people is, I'm not going to judge you because, trust me, we could do a whole week-long series on the things that I could talk about and make you blush. But we're not going to do that because at the end of the day, that was a different version of me. I'm grateful to some weird, twisted degree that it happened because I came out on the other side, luckily, and I wouldn't be the person that I am. And I think I'm all right.
No, you're amazing.
I think I'm pretty all right.
I really want to thank you for being here today, and I look forward to getting to follow you and getting to know you even more. Thank you so much, Jenna.
My pleasure. And anybody that needs help, let me know.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please rate us, like us, and share this podcast with our real estate community. The Nova Show Real Estate Record, sharing raw stories of real estate, failures, lessons, wins, and successes. This is all from Novation Title, bringing a different experience into your world so that we can all uplift each other. Until next time.